Time for business. Kate Moody joins us. The French government started to collect its controversial tax on tech giants, setting up another clash with the United States.
Yes, millions of euros at stake here, Mark. The French Finance Ministry has confirmed that it has been sending bills to the so-called GAFA tech giants. That's companies like Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon. It's a 3% levy on digital earnings for companies who have global revenues of over 750 million euros. That tax on digital giants was officially passed last year in France, but its collection was suspended while talks over a new global tax agreement were ongoing. Those negotiations at the OECD have largely broken down since the Trump administration withdrew its participation. Last year, the U.S. threatened to impose tariffs on more than €1 billion worth of French products because of that tax. It's not yet clear how the incoming Biden administration will deal with that trade dispute or with the broader matter of how to tax digital giants. The British government is predicting the coronavirus pandemic will push the economy into its deepest recession in 3 centuries. Revised forecasts now predict an 11% decline in GDP this year and a rise in unemployment to as much as 7.5% next year. To deal with the economic impact, the government is increasing its borrowing to its highest level in peacetime, more than €444 billion borrowed by the government this year. That's pushed the public debt level to over 100% of GDP. Well, that gloomy forecast came as the government outlined its spending plans to cope with the pandemic and with Brexit. Rishi Sunak said overseas aid would be scaled back and pay rises in much of the public sector put on hold, while investing more in schools, hospitals, and the emergency measures to support businesses and households.
Our health emergency is not yet over, and our economic emergency has only just begun. So our immediate priority is to protect people's lives and livelihoods. The furlough scheme, support for the self-employed, loans, grants, tax cuts and deferrals, as well as extra funding for schools, councils, the NHS, charities, culture and sport.
The number of Americans seeking unemployment benefits has risen for the second week in a row. Figures released a day earlier than usual because of the Thanksgiving holiday tomorrow showed a slight uptick in new applications, some 30,000 more than the previous week. The number of coronavirus infections in the U.S. continues to rise. More cities are imposing restrictions, and that's led to a spike in layoffs. Meanwhile, minutes from the Federal Reserve's meeting in early November suggest the American Central Bank is open to increasing its rate of monthly bond purchases if the economy and labor market need an additional boost. Let's check in on the day's trading action now. Wall Street more muted on Wednesday, a day after powering through new record highs. The Dow Jones dropping below that symbolic threshold of 30,000, which it passed for the first time ever yesterday. Wall Street is still on track for strong gains for the month of November, but the disappointing unemployment data and rising number of coronavirus cases has kept investors in check there. The head of the airline industry group IATA says that more airline carriers could go bankrupt because of the plunge in travel this year. The organization, which represents 290 airlines globally, says the sector has seen losses of almost €100 billion in 2020. IATA chief Alexandre de Juniac has been speaking to France 24's Stephen Carroll.
You know, we have already seen some bankruptcy. The estimate we have is that 40 airlines are already in bankrupt or in very, very difficult financial situation, first of all. And we could have some additional bankruptcies and probably very strong new plans, new restructuring plans. So we are still in a very, very difficult situation, unprecedented.
And you can see more of that interview in People and Profit. That's on air 4:45 Paris time tomorrow.
4:45 Paris time tomorrow. Kate, thank you. Stay with us. More news to come.
I've been beaten all my life. My body has got used to it.
We'll call her Milana. She's around 30. She's from Chechnya, a small Muslim republic in southern Russia with archaic patriarchal customs. And a hardline ruler, Ramzan Kadyrov, a protege of Vladimir Putin. Kadyrov supports polygamy and the subjugation of women, and does not tolerate free speech. Milana remains anonymous because in Chechnya, stories like hers are taboo.
This scar is from when my father used to give me the belt. Here is when he put a cigarette out. That's from being beaten with a stick. He harassed me and was always touching me where it's not allowed when he was drunk. And I couldn't tell anyone about it because I was afraid to bring shame on my family.
It was shame that drove Milana to flee Chechnya for this shelter in another part of Russia. She fears for her life after she was raped by a Chechen security officer who filmed it and is using the video as blackmail.
My parents would have killed me. And even if my parents didn't, then my uncles or my cousins would have. In our clan, they'd certainly have found a man to kill me. The word victim doesn't exist for us. The woman is always at fault.
To back up what she's saying, Milana shows us reports broadcast on Chechen state TV. Scenes of female humiliation orchestrated by Ramzan Kadyrov himself. He accuses the women of so-called honor crimes.
Aren't you ashamed for your brother? Look at your hairstyle. Because of you, people are talking about his wife, saying she hangs out in all the cafes. It's because of such women that we have all these divorces, these dozens, hundreds of guys in prison, these hundreds of honor crimes.
For us, if a woman is at fault, they call up her old clan. They say to the man, "You're a man, aren't you? So sort your sister out then. Either you get her married or..."
Because of her ambition, because there's no one to calm her down, because there's no man to put her in her place. Given that she's mad and not right in the head, one should have read her the Quran, told her, "Hey, what are you doing? You, who are supposed to be her brother. Yes, I'm talking to you. You should have calmed your sister down."
On June the 23rd this year, the president lambasted the mother of a 23-year-old woman, accusing her daughter's husband of beating her to death a few days previously. She had her body exhumed for an autopsy. Furious at what he deemed an affront to his vision of Islam, Kadyrov ruled that the children should be returned to the presumed killer, who would face no further charges.
Even if they have been taken away from you, your daughters will be returned. I'll look after their needs. I'll build a house. I'll do everything for them.
A month later, Chechen TV shows the family-in-law moving into their new house. It's this kind of impunity that forces Chechen women to suffer in silence. This refuge in the Chechen capital does offer them temporary accommodation. Its main aim, though, is mediation, to get them to return to their families.
It's our traditional way of resolving relations within the family. Our religious authorities are on the front line of resolving family disputes. Our aim, above all, is not so much to defend the rights of women, but the children's future. We try to make sure that the child keeps both parents.
According to Chechen tradition, when there is a divorce, the children go to the father's family. But when we ask about Ramzan Kadyrov's position on these issues, the conversation is abruptly cut short.
Stop there, please. You must not speak about that. You must not speak about Ramzan Ahmatovich.
To talk openly, we have to leave Chechnya and head to the neighboring republic of Ingushetia. So-called honor crimes are rife across large parts of the Russian Caucasus. Saida Sirajudinova, a sociologist specializing in gender issues, has been studying the phenomenon closely.
The explosion in honor killings is a relatively recent phenomenon. It's due first and foremost to neo-traditionalism, that is, the attempt to bring old traditions back to life by reinterpreting them.
Saida believes there are far more so-called honor killings than the 50 or so she's been able to confirm.
This is a characteristic of our region. There's a crime, but society is silent. In most cases, even the mothers try to dissimulate the tragedy because they're dependent on the community and on other family members.
It would be good if we in Chechnya, us women, were listened to like that. if there would be an institution independent of a ruler.
Stuck in a shelter far from Chechnya, Milana dreams of free speech whilst watching Russian TV shows where victims of domestic violence express themselves openly.
Today in Chechnya, on the surface, everything seems okay, but in every Chechen family, there are girls like me who are suffering, who are beaten by their parents, who have no rights, not even the right to go outside.
Leaving a huge weight of tradition behind her, she faces an uncertain future.
France 24. Every art form.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.